You're listening to the Modern Mom and Dad podcast, a modern take on marriage, relationships, parenting, life, and so much more.
Testing.
We're live.
Are we? Welcome back to the Modern Mom and Dad podcast.
We're your hosts. I'm Caitlyn.
And I'm Ty.
And should we give a quick recap of this week?
Yeah, I think so.
It's been a big week here in the Neier household.
Yeah, huge week for us.
Yeah, so we transferred an embryo on Tuesday, and what that means is we've been going through the IVF process, and we did an egg retrieval back in December, and luckily we had 2 embryos that were like PGT normal. We had them tested. Anyways, so we transferred one of those embryos on Tuesday of this week, the week that we're filming, and it's 3 days past our transfer now. So we are kind of just in the waiting game to see if our transfer took and if we are indeed staying pregnant, because technically we're actually pregnant right now.
Yeah, just if it will, what's the term? If it will attach or embed? What, in your
implants.
Implants, sorry, yeah, I can think of the word.
That's okay.
Yeah, if it implants in your uterus. So
yes.
Now it's just a waiting game.
Yeah.
Our appointment is next Thursday?
Next Thursday. So yeah, once you do the transfer over at our clinic, they do a beta blood draw pregnancy test 9 days past transfer. So in the waiting game right now, but the experience of the transfer was pretty easy for the most part.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about your... So the one job, like she could still eat. Like a lot of times when you have a procedure done, they tell you don't eat or don't drink or
I think that's
whatever.
when you have anesthesia, though.
Yeah, but for this one, she could eat and drink. But the thing, they wanted her to come in with a full bladder.
They did. I had one job. And did I come in with a full bladder?
You did not.
I did, but it wasn't enough still.
It wasn't full enough, yeah. I would say that it's not full then.
So we had to stop mid-procedure, and my doctor had to go to a different appointment, and he said, drink all this water, and I'll be back. So I was like, great.
You drank like a liter, and then they brought you 3 small water bottles?
Yeah, so probably just under 2 liters is what I had to chug in a very short period of time. The reason they want you to drink so much water is because of the placement of the uterus. So when your bladder is full, it helps.
It like flattens it out.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I had no idea. I was asking the ultrasound tech. I was like, is this so like you can see through it? Like if there's a gap, can you not see it correctly? But she's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's that when the bladder's full, it like flattens out the uterus. But it depends on the woman and the way her uterus is shaped, because sometimes they want an empty bladder.
Yeah, and that brings a whole nother issue. My doctor could not find my uterus, and I was thinking, great, it's gone. Like, this is it. My uterus, I don't know where it went, but it's gone.
I was trying to downplay it, but I was kind of getting worried because he asked, like, he's like, have you ever had surgery?
Yeah.
And stuff like that, and we're like, what's going on?
I was getting so nervous. I was like, I was trying to be super positive, but the whole day of the transfer, I'm like, something's got to go wrong. Like, this is too good to be true. This transfer process has been way too easy. Like, I'm just waiting for the bad news. And I feel like when you're going through infertility, you kind of always prepare yourself for the worst. So I'm like, okay, are we actually doing this transfer today or are we not? So we get into the procedure room and all of these issues start coming up, and I'm like, great, this isn't actually going to happen. But it did. It all worked out. Apparently my uterus is clear back in the left of my body.
Yeah, it's like canted down to the left of like your left.
Yeah, he had to use like not the stomach
probe.
one, but the Wanda one,
the phallic shaped probe
for the what's it called? Ultrasound.
Yeah, the ultrasound. Yeah, the
ultrasound. They were trying to do it on the stomach, but they had to go vaginally in order to find my uterus while the catheter was in. It was a lot.
Yeah, it was
anyways
kind of strange, but yeah, the catheter was in, and then on the screen, once they found, they're like, all right, it's go time. There's a screen in the operating room or whatever you want to call it, and basically they show like the embryo. They zoom in on the petri dish or whatever you want to call it, and they zoom in on the embryo itself, and like you verify like your name's on the thing and whatever, and then they zoom in, and then they basically like what would you call it? Like
suction it up.
Suck it up into like the tube that goes through the catheter.
When they did that, you know that TikTok or reel that goes wee
Oh, yeah.
He goes, wee.
Yeah.
I just want to, like, I mentally put that sound to that thing happening. When the embryo got sucked up, I was thinking, wee.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was kind of crazy because they just come walking in with a tube that's like your baby's in the tube, in the fluid in the tube.
Yeah, so the embryologist, after they suck it up, they bring it into the room and transfer it to the doctor, and then the doctor attaches it to the catheter and plunges it into your uterus. So we got to see that process. Like on the, we got to see the embryo go into my uterus, but you don't actually see the embryo. You see an air bubble because the embryo is so small.
The way they like suck it up into the tube, they create like an air bubble, I think, in between. So then you can see it like once it's in your uterus, and that's how they kind of determine it's where we want it. And that's what he said. He's like, that's exactly where we wanted it. And then they also, once they're done, they flush the tube out just to make sure. I
was wondering that because that was actually a concern of mine that I hadn't actually like verbally said out loud. I'm like, what if the embryo doesn't actually get transferred to my uterus?
I know, that went through my mind, especially because they're in the back lab, you know, with all the babies back there in petri dishes.
All of the babies.
Yeah, all the babies. And then they suck up the embryo in the tube, and then they have to walk from that lab through the door into the room we're in.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's like a big...
Yeah.
Like, a lot of bad things could happen. And then they're just holding the plunger. Yeah. Like, what if you accidentally slipped?
I know. The whole...
Like, there's a lot of things that could go... I could see a lot of things that could go wrong in that scenario. I mean, everything went smooth for us.
It did. But it's crazy because, like, this going through this entire transfer process, I'm like, there's no way that this becomes a baby. There's no way that I can get pregnant from this. Like, I obviously know IVF is a real thing. I know children born of IVF, but it just seems so bizarre when you're going through...
Yeah.
Surreal, yes. When you're going through this process, it's just such an amazing experience that obviously we didn't want to go through infertility, but it's opened my eyes to a lot of things and educated me about a lot of things, and science is incredible. It is very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's crazy how they can just like, they grow the embryo, like they extract it and they grow it in a petri dish for what, 5 days, and then they freeze it, and then they can thaw it, and then it still is able to just resume like it wasn't frozen, you know, like
right. Like
it doesn't die. I don't, you know, like it can somehow just kick back on and start splitting. The cells start splitting again and multiplying. It's fascinating to me.
Very fascinating. And we are very hopeful, and we'll keep you guys updated as we hear more and learn more. We don't know anything yet, but we'll be sharing probably over on Instagram and YouTube too, possibly before the podcast. So if you're not following us over there, definitely give us a follow.
When would the doctor give us 60% chance?
50 to 60%. Yeah.
So it's, I mean, a little bit better than a coin toss, you know.
I've been having a lot of cramping today, so I'm like, maybe that's
it's like
a sign.
Implanting.
Yeah, today would be like a time frame for the implantation because it's 3:10 right now, so we're almost exactly 72 hours away from when we did the transfer. So yeah, we could definitely be experiencing implantation right now, but I've been having some cramping in the left side of my body, which is where my uterus is, now that I know that.
Yeah.
So very interesting to see what happens and if it works. Yeah. Anyways.
Well, we're trying to keep the highs not too low and the lows not too low, trying to stay in the middle.
Wait, you just said the high is not too low.
Did I?
The high is not too high.
You got to keep your highs not too high and your lows not too low.
Yeah.
You got to, you know.
Yep.
I'm definitely really excited. I know Caitlyn is, but
I feel like he's been more optimistic than I have, which is actually different for us. I've been...
It was definitely like an emotional experience. Once you see the picture and everything of it, like you actually see it like on the screen, and we have pictures of the embryo.
Once we got out of the procedure and got back to our room, we just held each other and got very emotional, and it was a very intimate moment for us. And whatever results out of this, it's been a really good experience with you. So
I'm just glad I got to wear a dryer sheet suit.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they made us, obviously, because it's almost like an operating room, they made us wear like gowns and like hospital garbs, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, I think it's funny that they left us alone in there for like 23. Okay, so hold on, backtrack to the when I had to drink more water. They literally left us in the operating room with my feet strapped to the
In the stirrups.
The stirrups.
Yeah, she was in the stirrups for a long time. Yeah. And, like...
And they said, drink the water.
I think the ultrasound tech just forgot to, like, unstrap you. And she also left the ultrasound wand thing on top of you. Yeah. So you're like, can I sit up? Or am I not supposed to? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to sit up. So, like, you can, like... Because you're trying to fill your bladder.
Yeah. No, it was just funny. I'm like, here I am strapped to the table, exposing anybody who walks by, basically. Drinking this water.
It was more open than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. Like, I just keep saying like. I'm working on it.
It's okay. I told him, I'm like, Ty, you need to watch your likes.
But yeah, the room is pretty open.
Yeah.
Not that people are walking by, but...
That was nothing compared to the egg retrieval, though. The egg retrieval, there was like 6 people in there, and I'm just laying there, spread
Were they all,
open.
Like, doing things, or were there, like, students? Damn, I said like again.
It's okay.
Were there students?
Yeah, I think there was, there was the anesthesiologist, there was the doctor, the nurses,
I guess there was a lot of people
the embryologist.
Involved.
There was just a lot, but anyways... that's our fertility update and the big news that's going on in the Neier household. We did something else exciting this week.
Yeah, the other night we planned our Italy trip.
We did, yeah. We are going to Italy in July. We're going with our friends, and my friend is surprising her fiance and with this trip. So it just happens to be his 40th birthday, and over the trip it just happens to be my 30th birthday. Mm-hmm. So for us, we're kind of celebrating his birthday, my birthday. We're really hoping this is also a baby moon at the same time. Mm-hmm. But either way, it's going to be an awesome trip. We're flying
into Rome.
Yeah, Rome, and then we're going to Positano.
Yeah, Positano, is that how you pronounce it? Positano?
I'm not entirely sure.
I think that's right.
And then we're then we're going to Florence, and then back to Rome, and then we'll fly out. So It's going to be quite the trip, because I'm taking Scarlett to my mom in Kansas, so we have to coordinate flights for that. It's a lot.
We're all like meeting up in New York and then flying out from there.
Yeah, so I'll meet Ty in New York. He's going to fly with my friends, and it's a lot.
Yeah, a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, a lot of planning and figuring things out and hoping everything's on time, but it'll be worth it.
I was surprised because I looked up the average flight times from New York to Rome, and it's like 8 hours, and I thought it would be a lot more.
Yeah, that's not that bad.
It just seems way farther than 8 hours away.
Yeah, but I guess when you add the time from Phoenix to New York, it's a lot.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because that's a good flight. Yeah, for sure.
It's like 5 hours, right? So, yeah, that's what we're doing in July. That's like our big trip. We don't really have any other trips planned this year because Italy's a lot. It's taking up a lot. So that is our big trip that we're planning. But,
yeah, we're staying at a lot of Airbnbs.
Oh my gosh, they're so beautiful and like so inexpensive.
Yeah, good prices compared to like resorts and stuff. It's like a no-brainer.
Yeah,
you just have to.
Amazing.
It's just more planning. But.
And I've been communicating with a family in Positano who is your typical Italian family, and they host like cooking classes, and they have a farm, and you can go to their cooking class and you pick the fruits and the vegetables and the produce that you need from the farms, and you take that and you cook that, and then you eat the dinner. It's seriously going to be the coolest experience, but we just got that all set up, and that's probably the thing I'm looking forward to the most is the cooking class. Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking forward to being there.
Yeah.
I mean, the cooking class will be cool, but that's more your thing.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I think you're actually going to really enjoy it.
I'm sure
it's going to be one of those things where you're like, okay, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They seem like a really cool family.
Well, it was like an all-day thing, too. It's not like...
And it's going to be a good, authentic experience, you know? Like, I really want to dive into the culture as much as we can, and I feel like that's really going to put us deep into the culture and give us, like, an authentic experience. Mm-hmm. So, I'm really excited.
Definitely, yeah.
Really excited.
It'll be a blast.
Anyways, I know there's been a lot of interest about...
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions about, like, my military experience, so we wanted to cover that.
Ty's never really,
a little more detail. Yeah, I've never really, like...
Gone into detail.
So, but yeah, we can get into that. Like, I'll run through, when I joined all the way through, like, Guantanamo Bay, like, when I was deployed there, and then... getting out and stuff. So
yeah, we thought he could just kind of share like a a little story time today of his past in the Army and what it was like in Gitmo, and I'm always very fascinated by it. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah. So let's see. I kind of went over it before, I think in our first podcast, but I was going to school. I always kind of had the itch to join the military. It's just something I wanted to do. No one really in my family had joined the military, like my direct family. So just something I always wanted to do. And I kind of looked at the different branches, and I went with the Army. At the time, I thought I was kind of toying around in school, toying around with criminal justice. I was kind of fascinated by, like, you know, the criminal justice system and everything. And I thought I might want to be a cop in real life, but I was like, I don't know if that's like my type of job, if I would be happy doing that. So, but anyway, I ended up joining the Army as military police. I joined as enlisted. So I joined because I had college credits and some other stuff. Like they do a physical fitness test, and the more points you get, like when you join, you can actually join as a higher rank. So you're not just like a private. I was like a private first class joining. So I joined as a PFC, is like the abbreviation, so private first class. And basic training was in Fort Leonard, Missouri.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you?
Mm-hmm.
How old were you when you joined?
19.
19,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 19. Yeah, and if you have any questions throughout it.
Yeah, I might interrupt you if I have a question.
Yeah, because I'm sure I'll leave some stuff out if you don't. So, Fort Leonard, Missouri, it's nicknamed Fort Lost in the Wood. It's like right in the middle of the Mark Twain forest, so it's like very remote, very Missouri. If you've ever been to Missouri, if you're from Missouri, you know what I mean. And so basic training is typically like 9 weeks, but with mine, they called it like one station unit training. So it was like basically basic training is the 9 weeks, but also on top of that is your they call it AIT. I don't know. It's like advanced individual training, but it was basically military police school. So you have your basic training for 9 weeks, but then it immediately rolls into military police school. So there's no real break. So I think I was gone for 20, I don't remember exactly, but 20 some weeks. And it seemed like I was in basic training for all 20 of those weeks. Given we got some privileges towards the end, but it was just a long stretch, like 4 or 5 months of my life where it was just like not a whole lot to look forward to. It was hard, but I wouldn't say it's like anybody could do it, like basic training. There's always like the rivalry between the branches. Like the Marine Corps probably is the hardest. Like theirs is called boot camp. Theirs is probably the hardest. The Army's is fairly hard.
What was boot camp, or not boot camp?
Basic
training. What was it like? Like, give us like a rundown of what your days were like.
So when you first get there, you don't even start for a while. You're in like, it's almost like reception battalion. So that's when you get issued all your gear. So you get there on a bus. They treat you like garbage. It's just part of the whole thing. You get all your gear. You get your boots. You get your uniforms. You eventually get your rifle, and pretty much everything that goes along with being a soldier, like your duffel bags and stuff. And you're in a reception battalion, and they don't really tell you. You're on like a need to know basis. They don't really care if you know what's going on. You're just kind of along for the ride. So, and then they call it the shark attack. It's like kind of like day 0 or like day 1 of basic training, and that's where they load you up on old school buses. And they drive you to like your basic training battalion. That's where you meet your drill sergeants, the people that yell at you for a living. And that's when, I mean, they call it a shark attack for a reason. They basically just rush the bus, screaming, cursing at you, saying everything possible to you to break you down, because that's the whole point, is to break you down. And they're like, get off the effing bus, like get in formation, fall in line. And you're carrying like, I remember I was carrying like 3 duffel bags full of gear. And it's like, I don't know, maybe 100 pounds, maybe more. But you're like, oh, you're trying to do, and they're just in your face yelling. It's definitely very intimidating. A lot of people are always like, oh, if I was in the military, I'd yell back at the drill sergeants. Like, no, you wouldn't, because they would literally make your life hell until they break you. I mean,
a serious question. Did anybody cry? Because like I
feel
like I would cry.
Yeah,
they did.
Well, and yeah, definitely. People definitely break down, and the way they do it. So basically, they do the shark attack. They get you in formation, and they wait for one person to like mess up. like, or they'll say like they call it front leaning rest position, which is like the push-up position, and they'll make you go halfway down and hold it, and the first person that fails, they'll basically like single them out, and then they'll be like, no, you stand up and watch the rest of the group do it, just because you can't do it. So it's kind of like that if you mess up, you get all of your buddies in trouble. And it's like in the moment you're like, why are they doing this? You know, it's like mind games. Mm-hmm. But the reason they do it is because like if you're actually in a combat zone, it's not Boy Scouts, it's not Girl Scouts, it's not a game. If you mess up, you could literally get your buddy killed or your buddies killed. You know, so it's like it's very important to take it seriously and always basically not get complacent. That's the biggest thing, is you don't get complacent. There's standards for a reason. But yeah, the whole thing is to break you down and build you back up. So the first 3 weeks, you're not getting any sleep. You might get a couple hours here and there, but they call it red phase, and it's like where you're just doing physical activity all day. They're basically grinding you into the ground. They'll wake you up in the middle of the night with trash cans, like metal trash cans, throw them, make you do a bunch of push-ups, and then you go back to bed, and then as soon as they walk out, they walk back in and do the same thing over and over. And it's just to mentally just break you, just to basically teach you how to like endure hardship. I mean, that's what it's all about.
I think you were telling me the other day you had one thing you looked forward to every day or every other day.
Yeah, so we've been eating like, well, this is a couple months ago. I finally started like cooking French toast, or Caitlyn kind of showed me how, because I'm not very good at cooking, or we'll order it too. But yeah, so every other day. So the Army, they do give you 3 meals a day. So they wake you up and you basically march to we call it the DFAC, which is like dining facility, the chow hall, whatever you want to call it. And every other morning for breakfast, there's French toast there, and that was like the one thing. It's so sad, but it's like pathetic, but the one thing I had to look forward to, and you're like completely cut off from your home life. Like you can't talk to your parents. I was dating my high school sweetheart at the time. You can't talk, to your significant other. There's some older guys in there with families too.
You had 5 minutes right?
Not really. So this came later. It wasn't in red phase. You're just cut off.
Oh,
you could get letters from your family, and a lot of times families would send like snacks, and like my family would send me like Mountain Dew and Skittles and all this stuff that they knew I wouldn't be able to have. Like they wouldn't give us. But the problem is as soon as you get that, like they make you like stand in front of everybody and just eat. They're like, all right, you have 1 minute. And
that's crazy.
And they're like, and I remember like taking a whole deal of Skittles and just shoving it down, because you're like, I was fairly skinny going into basic training, and I got down to like probably in the 140s.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
I was like, I could run all day, but man, I lost like too much weight, and it was a lot of like, they were trying to do that because there's some guys that were overweight and some gals that were overweight and stuff, so they're trying to get them to lose weight. But I was like, I need more calories, like, so I was just perpetually hungry all the time.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Like,
yeah, I remember going to like bed and like just never been hungrier in my life, and that was a really hard part about it. Just being isolated and being hungry. Yeah. And just you're like, man, when's this gonna end?
Did you ever have any regrets for joining, or did you always see like a bigger picture? Like,
oh yeah, anybody that's ever been there is you always question like, why the hell did I do this?
Yeah, that's what I would wonder.
Yeah.
I have another
like, what
question.
did I sign up for?
Was it what you expected?
No, not. I mean, parts of it, yes, but overall, no.
What's an example? Like, what did you think it was going to be like, and what was it actually like?
So like some of the things that like met my expectations were like, you see the cheesy commercials. You're rappelling off buildings or out of helicopters, shooting machine guns, that type of stuff. We did do a lot of like combat, like infantry style training, where we'd go out to ranges and shoot like machine. That's the first time I'd ever shot like a real like automatic rifle, like the 249, like the SAW, or the 240 Bravo, which is like a bigger version, or like the 50 cal, which is like the big, like mounted, like you can't carry it. It's like very heavy. But I remember like the first day we went to like U.S. weapons, and it was like this huge course, and you're just shooting down this huge hill, and it was like I had a big smile on my face.
That was fun for you?
Yeah, a lot of stuff like that. But overall, the military is a lot of it almost feels like the real Army feels like a federal employee job. You feel like a federal employee, like a government employee. You're just in uniform. It's a lot of like, they call it hurry up and wait. Like, hurry up, get in line, and then you wait. And then it's just so much like administrative paperwork, like admin paperwork or medical paperwork, or a lot of like bureaucracy. I don't even really know how to like explain it, but I'm sure there's some listeners out there that have been in the military. They know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, it's a lot of that. Yeah. So that part, I'd say it's like 80% that, maybe even more administrative, boring stuff. And then you get some of the fun stuff here and there, like where you can sign up for a lot of schools. Like once you're out of like basic training, like you can go to like, I did like combatives, which is like hand to hand, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kind of MMA style training. What else? Combat Lifesaver, which is like a medic course for like regular soldiers that aren't medics. I'm trying to think. You can go to like airborne school. I never went to airborne school or anything like that, where you get to jump out of planes, stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. Like, I think if I did it all over again, I wouldn't do military police. But
yeah, have you mentioned that yet? That you were MP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in the beginning. So basically, how it all works, base training, like I was talking, red phase. That's where it really sucks. And gradually, the drill sergeants kind of lighten up and open up to you a little bit more, treat you more like a human.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they treat you like a soldier, but in the beginning, you're trash. You mean nothing to them.
Gotcha.
You almost like Stockholm syndrome. You start to weirdly respect them, but it's like total like mental Stockholm syndrome type of thing. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a psychology major. But yeah, basically once we got through basic training, and then it was MP school, and that's where like military police school. So it was all cop stuff. It was like half cop stuff, like garrison, like being a police officer. And then I've quickly learned that I don't really like any of that stuff. It's just not the type of person I am. I respect that's the hardest job on the planet, or one of them for sure. But I really enjoyed, like, the other half of it was more combat support related. So the job that military police does overseas, like, and given this was in 2009, so this was when Iraq was still popping off, but Afghanistan was really crazy at the time. So a lot of what MPs do overseas is convoy security. So they're the guys with the gun trucks, like they have like up armored Humvees and what they call MRAPs, which are like bigger, almost like if a tank and a Humvee had a baby. They're just like really big vehicles, armored vehicles, where you have a bunch of guns on them. Basically, you're protecting convoys. But the problem with that is they're a lot of times the ones that get blown up by like IEDs, which are like bombs, that the terrorists would plant. So we would do a lot of training for that towards the end, which was actually really fun training. It was more combat related, which I liked. But it was also scary because you're like, man, it could go south real quick, like everybody's G.I. Joe until bullets start flying. And then you never know how you're going to react in the situation. But yeah, so so we graduate from that, and then I went to my unit, and there were like several times they're like, oh, we're going to Afghanistan. I was like, yeah, I figured, because that's exactly what was happening at the time. Afghanistan, I knew a lot of guys that were getting deployed over there. So I just assumed that I would end up over there. There's times where we'd actually we would get mobilized, is what they call it, and we were actually like training in California and like also like Fort Bliss, Texas, like right by El Paso, like out in the boonies out there, where we're practicing like convoy security type stuff. And this happened like 3 different times over the years, and it kept getting off ramped. Well, like it kept getting canceled last minute. So I was like, what's going on, and it, like deep down, I really wanted to do like one combat tour. As dumb as it sounds, I want to do one combat tour and then get out. But I never really got that chance, because honestly, I probably could have volunteered, went with a different unit or whatever. But I really liked the guys that were around me, so I stuck with my unit. And then this was in probably 2013. my unit got mobilized to go do, they call it detainee ops, like basically being a prison guard in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And it was one of those things, like, our deployments had gotten canceled so much. I was like, there's no way. That's like, okay. But we really started training, and we ended up back at Fort Bliss, Texas, doing like full on, like, they had like a mock prison set up there, and like, you know, how do you respond to riots? Just basic prison guard stuff. And yeah, I ended up in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
You didn't actually think you were going to go? And then
no,
you said,
I really didn't. I even like weeks before, I was like, there's no way this is going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no way. And then, yeah, found myself in the infamous Guantanamo Bay detainee facility.
So let's talk about Gitmo and what that was like. I mean, as much as you can say, and what your job was.
Yeah, there's certain things I can't share, but
Sure.
I really, it doesn't bother me. But one thing, so I think it's worth noting, it's Cuba, so it's like the Caribbean. It's beautiful down there, but the humidity is terrible. It is just god awful. I remember flying into it. They have like an airstrip on the other side, because it is a bay, you know, Guantanamo Bay. On one side of the bay is the airstrip, but the base is like on the other side. And I remember we fly in to the airstrip on like a 747 Boeing or whatever plane, and as soon as they open the doors, like on the tarmac, just that humidity just hits you in the face, and it's just there. It's real sticky, and you're just never. I don't know. For me, I was never quite comfortable. It just always kind of had that, like, that humid, just musty smell, and all the I don't know. It's bizarre, but.
So your job there was, you had two.
Well, so that's later.
Oh, okay.
So when I first got there, my unit was in charge of the hospital wing, which was kind of separate from the regular camps, what you would consider like general population or like the maximum security. Those are two separate camps. So my unit worked in the hospital, like the hospital unit, whatever you want to call it. And I think it was called the BHU, Base Hospital Unit, or something like that. But that was a pretty crazy time. That was like the first like couple months I was there. That's where we spent most of our time. We worked long shifts. Ended up like seeing a lot of crazy stuff in the hospital unit, because you're dealing with a lot of guys that have been, you know, locked up for a long time. So they've that like isolation and stuff that messes you up fairly quickly. And some of those guys have been there over a decade.
What's something crazy you saw?
So a lot of it was like, a lot of them were very frail individuals. So a lot of them, part of their like version of a protest would be they would go on hunger strikes. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the guys are like 90 pounds, if that. So the conundrum, you know, the U.S. government had, or has, I don't know if they still even have people there, but do you let them starve themselves and be the bad guy? Or do you strap them down and basically force feed them through like a nasal drip? Like basically it was Ensure, like the nutrition shake. Mm-hmm. Are you the bad guy letting them starve themselves to death, or do you force feed them and you're bad guy? It's like you have to do one or the other.
Yeah.
So that we would basically have to strap guys down and force feed them.
Oh my gosh.
But we wouldn't do the tube. They have like Navy corpsmen, which are like medics, or they were the ones that would put the tube down their nose. And most of them were like, they'd been there long enough, they knew what was up. They still refused to eat, but they were very compliant. So some of them we didn't even have to strap. They would just sit in a chair take the nasal drip. But it was kind of like their religious, you know, they were still in the fight, so to speak.
And they weren't convicted, right?
Yeah, and this is part, like, I don't want to get too political. I know Gitmo is very controversial.
Because that's one of the most controversial. Me, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
If they weren't convicted, but they're being held there.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, without getting too political, I definitely could empathize with some of the guys that were, I'm not saying I sympathize with them. I'd say I'm more empathetic towards their situation because they've been held against their will, locked up, and they were never charged with anything. And this is all like open source. You can look up all the WikiLeaks, all those documents are out there. But yeah, I mean, they weren't charged with anything. If you're on U.S. soil, that's why Gitmo is a kind of a legal gray area. So yeah, it's kind of conundrum. It's a gray area, legally speaking. If you're like a U.S. I'm no lawyer, but I mean, if you're a U.S. citizen and you're locked up, on U.S. soil, they have to charge you with something, or they have to let you go. That's the freedoms we have in this country. And that's kind of where Gitmo is that gray area, because it's not technically U.S. soil. It's like they annexed it kind of from Cuba. They pay the Cuban government. I forget. It's like a joke, like a couple $1,000s or something. Oh, but Cuba's never cashed a check, to legitimize. But it's a weird deal, the whole thing. But yeah, I definitely empathized with their situation, because definitely some of the people there are very much. They hate our way of life. They hate the United States. They hate everything we stand for, and they want to do harm to us. But on the flip side, there are also people there that may have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
And that's where it's like, what do? Do you let them go? And then they end up, you were wrong, and they're on the battlefield. And that's not my decision to make, but we had a job to do, and that's what we did. But in the hospital unit. But yeah, that's probably one of the craziest things I saw was like just some of the guys we had to strap down to chairs. It's not a great experience. The other crazy stuff was some of the crazier guys that were like still in the fight. They would we called it splashing. So legally we have to offer them some of them were on meds for whatever, and then you obviously you legally have to offer them their meals, their 3 meals a day. No matter what, that's just legally, you cannot skip that. Well, sometimes when the hunger strikers would accept their meal, you're like, what's going on here? And in the door, the cell doors, there's a little feed tray slot that opens up. And a lot of times the detainees would cover their camera in their room so we couldn't see them, their globe or whatever. And they would I don't want to get too graphic, but bodily fluids in cups, and they would splash us with it.
Like their
urine, feces, blood,
oh my God.
Semen. I mean, anything you could think of.
You've told me this before, but every time you say it again, it's so
it's disgusting. So that's just their way of staying in the fight, giving us the middle finger. It is what it is. The hardest part of it is you can't. I mean, a lot of people think that a lot of bad things happen in Gitmo, and that may be true in the past, but by the time I'd gotten there, it was very much, very PC, very above board. If you did the wrong thing, you might find yourself in Leavenworth, Kansas, locked up, like as a soldier. Mm-hmm. Like you had to do everything by the book. So if you were splashed, you could not do anything in retaliation. And if you did, you're mic'd up, there's cameras everywhere, you're going bye-bye. So you just have to take it. Yeah.
Oh my
and
gosh.
That's where a lot of guys come back from Gitmo, a lot of soldiers come back from Gitmo with PTSD, because it's hard to handle when you can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And I got splashed once with urine. I'll be honest, it wasn't really that bad. But anytime you get splashed, you have to go to the hospital. They have to take your blood, because some of the detainees have like hepatitis or whatever, or, they just want to make sure that you didn't catch anything from them. But yeah, so I saw some pretty bad stuff. We ended up having to wear Tyvek suits, like kind of like it protects you from anything, like and face shields. Yeah. But even the face shields, like I saw one corpsman take a cup of feces right under it on his face.
Oh my God, I cannot imagine.
And it's hard to walk that one off. But he handled himself fairly well. But yeah, so the hospital unit, not a fun place to work. A lot of guys that have some mental issues, which is understandable given, that a lot of the detainees had been locked up for over a decade by the time I'd gotten there. And then after working that, probably somewhere around 2 months, I'm not even sure, a month and a half, 2 months, I got pulled aside. I got selected to go work in a different camp where they had like high value, what the Army would call like high value terrorists or, detainees that had maybe like given up information, or maybe they were innocent but they didn't know what to do with them. So they made their lives a little bit easier. And I got to work in a special part of the camp where I was in charge of 2 guys. I shouldn't say I was in charge. My team was in charge of 2 guys. And they basically had given up so much information, and one of them was for sure innocent. He has a book and a movie about it, which I'll cover later. But they had everything. They had like their own little section of the camp. They had their own huts that they lived in. They had gardens. They had TVs. They had like satellite TV.
They had coffee.
Coffee.
He tells me all about
and tea.
Coffee.
Yeah, he one of them made this tea every day. Little Man. We call him Little Man. And books, laptops. I mean, they didn't have internet or anything like that. They're definitely, they had everything, and this is going to sound bad, but they had everything, all the comfort items they could have minus their freedom. I mean, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Like any connection to the outside world.
Yeah. They did get video chats.
Oh, okay.
Every, like, I want to say once a month with with their families in this particular camp. But yeah, so the 2 guys, one we call Little Man, Mohamedou. He was a Mauritanian, Mauritania, Africa. He grew up there, but he was educated in Germany. He won like a scholarship. He was like one of the smartest people in Mauritania. So he got a scholarship in Germany. He spoke like, I want to say 7 languages. I don't remember exactly. Computer programmer. Just an extremely intelligent person. And the other guy, Tariq, was like, we called him Big Man because when he got to Gitmo, I don't know this for sure, but we speculate that they fed him a lot to get information out of him.
Gotcha.
I don't know that, but that's just what he was a big guy, like 350. So we had Little Man, who was probably like, I don't know, 110, 120 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And then we had Big Man. And Tariq, Big Man, was like, he loved his garden. He wasn't quite as clean as Little Man. Little Man was like, you could eat off his floor, like extremely clean. But yeah, so it was bizarre because just like how Caitlyn and I are here sitting talking, I got to sit down and in quotes, sit down with the enemy, so to speak, and kind of pick their brain. And that was part of my job, was to just talk to them and be, what was the terminology? Personable, but not personal. So, they could be released someday, which they both have been.
Both of them?
Yes.
Big Man too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, basically the whole object, or the whole gist of my job was to be personable, but not personal. No personal information from me. But I could, talk to them. I could, that was part of my job. And
you had different names too that you went by.
Yeah, we had code names.
Code names, yeah.
Yeah, because you don't go in there with your name tape saying your name, because you never know. You don't want to be a target someday. So, and that's one of the reasons why I was always kind of reserved on being super public. Yeah, but I've come to realize like that's it. It's totally safe. Little Man Mohamedou, he's actually been released. He was never charged with anything. He actually has a book about his whole thing and how he kind of got caught up with the U.S. government and his whole story. It's actually called Guantanamo Diaries. You can get it on Amazon. Since then, Mohamedou's been released. He's actually like a public speaker now.
He was never convicted.
He was never convicted of anything. Basically, he got caught up based off his book and the movie that's about him. Is called the movie's called The Mauritanian. It's actually it's got, who's in it? Benedict Cumberbatch and what is her name? I can't think of her name.
You're asking me.
I know, but it's actually a really good movie, and I'm everything's fairly truthful. I mean, really. And I actually met, Jodie Foster plays his lawyer. Okay. And Nancy is his lawyer. I actually met Nancy quite a few times because she'd come to visit him and talk about his case. Yeah, like maybe once every couple months, maybe more often, but
it is such a good movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And I would talk to Nancy just like I talked to him, and she was like, he really did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Like, and she had been fighting for him for a decade.
Yeah.
So part of the problem was his brother, I believe it was his brother, or close relative, was a spiritual advisor to Osama bin Laden, like a direct spiritual advisor. And his family member used Osama bin Laden's satellite phone to call Muhammad at one point. And I believe like he asked for money or something. I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know all the details. But anyway, that's kind of how the government connected him to, you know, the most well-known terrorist in the world. And then he ended up getting snatched up and in prison for, I don't remember, but I want to say it's like 15 or 16 years. I believe he was released in 2006.
For doing nothing wrong.
Yeah.
That makes me so sad.
Being at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. That is such a problem.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, you know, I was very much like gung-ho, believe me, I'm still a huge patriot of the U.S. We've got our own problems.
Right.
Everybody knows that.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, where do you know?
Yeah.
Like, we have freedoms for a reason, and that's, you know, it's a principled thing.
Yeah.
Very much. But yeah, so he's been released since then. I believe he's like, I guess you'd call him like a public speaker. I believe he's making money off his book and obviously the movie that's about him. Then Tariq, he definitely was guilty.
Big man?
Yeah, big man.
Mm-hmm.
He got charged. He was some type of explosive expert, alleged. I guess it's been proven at this point. But he was released, I want to say before Little Man, which is ironic because he actually was guilty and got charged with something, did his time, and they let him go. But I'm not sure where he ended up. I believe he was from Egypt.
Okay.
Yeah, Egypt. Yeah, I believe he's Egyptian. But yeah, so yeah, it was very bizarre, you know, getting to sit down with them and talk to them. Spent a lot of time with them, both, mainly Little Man. Little Man was very polite, almost to a fault. Yeah, it was a very bizarre time in my life. It was very eye-opening, just for my own political beliefs. And yeah, it was a very, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it. It was a very important time of my life.
Mm-hmm. Learned a lot through that, I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
So what was life like when you came back from being in the military to becoming a civilian again? How was that adjustment?
Yeah, so I got back the end of 2014, basically like 2015. Like,
yeah,
I believe I got home right before Christmas, if I remember correctly.
You did, because then we met in January of 2006.
Yeah,
no,
right before
2015.
Yeah, in 2015.
Yeah, okay.
And my contract, so I joined in 2009. I had a 6-year contract, and my contract was up in 2015. So I was pretty much done once I got back from Cuba. So I was like, yeah, I don't even know what I'm going to do with my life, you know. And it was very weird because you come from, like, the military is a very structured, it was very strange. And so part of it, I was in the reserves. So going from the reserves to the civilian life, it's hard because you do like the 1 week in a month, like the weekend warrior thing, you know, whatever you want to call it. So you go from being a soldier, you're always a soldier, but you go from acting like a soldier, doing the things that soldiers have to do, to being a civilian. So it's hard to go back and forth because there's so many little things that you have to do when you're a soldier, like little things, like minuscule, like you can't wear a hat inside. You don't, as soon as you walk through, like breach a door, like you take your hat off.
Right.
Or you can't put your hands in your pockets. You can't walk and talk on the cell phone. There's a lot of rules that the military has, like etiquette and standards that you just can't do in the civilian world. So it was strange to go back and forth. So when I, you know, during the month when I wasn't at drill, is what they call like the weekend, you get a lot of those civilian tendencies, and then you have to go, oh, I have to be a soldier now, and you have to remember all the things that, oh, I can't do this, and this. Even like talking, like when you're driving on base, you can't be talking on your cell phone, like just random things like that. So it's a very strange world to go like back and forth, civilian soldier, or at least it was for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, going from that structure, like once you're completely done, going from that structure to just a civilian job is very strange, very, very strange.
Do you have any advice for anybody transitioning out of military to civilian, or anything that you wish you would have done differently, or do you feel like...
I would say obviously you're not going to have as much structure, because the Army tells you where to be, they tell you what to dress. Everything's very much planned out for you in a sense. So I would say if you're getting out, like, make yourself maintain some sense of structure. Like, I have to get up at this time. I have to do, for me, like with physical fitness and stuff, like I have to do, 2 miles and then go to the gym, and try to have some sense of structure, at least when you're immediately out. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. I've never really thought about that. 'Cause
drastically?
I'll be honest, it wasn't that hard for me. I was very much looking forward to it. By the time my contract was up, I was ready to get out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had a brief moment where I wanted to explore like helicopter aviation in the Army, but it would have been such a long contract because they're spending a lot of money to train you on a helicopter, how to fly and operate a helicopter. I would have been a lifer at that point.
Yeah.
I would have retired.
Can you imagine how different life would be if that's the path you decided to go down to?
And I was just ready to get out, because anybody that's been in the military, you just deal with a lot of BS. I don't even know how else to put it. It's a hard life. Mm-hmm. It's a very hard life, and
it's really hard for me to envision you following the rules so well, because from my perspective, the way I see you, you don't like being told what to do. You don't like...
Maybe the military made me
Maybe.
that way.
I'm just like, I can't even imagine you in this environment being so obedient, and I'm sorry that sounds bad, but I seriously cannot envision it.
I get it. And I was always skeptical. Like,
yeah.
In the Army is a lot of... The military in general is a lot of, like... I mean, I was enlisted. You always... You have to respect your officers, but at the same time, you're like, they're kind of armchair quarterbacking everything, mm-hmm. from a distance. And when it's boots on the ground, things operate a little bit differently than they do from some desk in some building, So that, I was always like, why are we doing... It was a lot of like, the military, to sum it up, is a lot of like, oh, we're getting off in a couple hours. And then your platoon leader, your lieutenant's like, oh, we have to... we think we're missing something, so we have to take out all of the gear and do an inventory. And then you're there till midnight.
Wow.
It's just what you have to do. You can't just say, nah, I'm not doing that, like, and that happens, that type of stuff happens a lot. And then the Army, their thing is, we can't keep good soldiers in the military. And it's like, yeah, because no good soldiers want to put up with that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not,
fair enough.
Yeah, I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from ever going into the military, because I think it was good for me overall.
Yeah.
But man, it's not an easy life, that's for sure.
Well, do you have any last thoughts before we end this episode? We actually have to go pick up our daughter from her art class.
It's about that time.
So we need to cut this episode.
You think there's anything I missed?
I've got one last question for you. What is something positive that you can take away from your experience in the military?
I would say, even though I'm not like disciplined, I wouldn't say I'm like a disciplined person, but I think the military gave me a sense of like, I'll get done what needs to be done no matter what, mm-hmm. type of mentality.
I agree.
Like a confidence, I guess. I would just say of mine. And also just like little things bother me. Like when you go to the grocery store and somebody doesn't put their cart away. Like
so
the military is very, like a respect, and like the military is huge on standards. Like you have to lace your boots a certain way, and you have to wear your uniform a certain way.
You accidentally almost stole a monster from
Yeah, but I went back
Safeway,
and
but he went
almost,
back and
yeah,
paid
almost,
for it.
yeah.
It was in our cart. And
I
he's
didn't
like,
want
"Did we
bad
pay?"
karma because of the transfer.
Yeah. He was like, "Did we pay for this monster?" I'm like, "I don't know." And so he's looking on the receipt and
I had to
goes
go
back
stand
into
back
the
in
store.
line.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like a lot of things like that, like there's a reason that the small details matter in the military, because if you're missing the small details, you're going to miss the big details that could get people hurt. And I know it's not that like life and death in the civilian world, but seeing when people are like just cut corners or crappy to each other, that really bothers me.
Sure.
And that's something I got out of it. It's just like a respect thing. It's I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I'd say that's the biggest thing,
Very
for sure.
cool. Well, thank you guys for joining in today's episode. I hope you enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about Ty's background in the military, and I hope you guys enjoyed hearing a little update of our baby embryo that is hopefully snuggled nice and warm into my uterus. But thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Do you want to follow along with us more? We would love that. Follow us over on YouTube and Instagram at The Modern Mom and Dad Podcast to interact with us, ask us questions, and to see behind the scenes. Thanks for listening to the Modern Mom and Dad Podcast, and we will see you next Tuesday.